How are you doing? Good to see everybody today. I want to talk a little bit about this third alternative. Yesterday we talked about a little bit about pessimism and optimism as a commitment to a view of how life unfolds. Today I want to explore a little bit that third way, but to do that, I want to read you something. This is from C.S. Lewis's Problem of Pain. This book he wrote, or a long essay. He says, in a sense, Christianity creates rather than solves the problem of pain. For pain would be no problem unless side by side with our daily experience of this painful world, we had received what we think of as a good assurance that ultimate reality is righteous and loving. Already, in a sense, Christianity creates rather than solves the problem of pain. For pain would be no problem unless side by side with our daily experience of this painful world, we had received what we think a good assurance that ultimate reality is righteous and loving. Now, I'll type that out too, maybe on a slide. But I wanted to use that as an introduction to talk about this. Real quickly, I'm going to talk about the four characters in Lament. The four characters who make Lament possible and make it meaningful, actually. The first character is God himself. Now, understand, I don't think we do ourselves any favor when we think about God as somehow an abstraction, the God who is omnipotent, omniscient, and all of these abstract terms. I think we have to see, that's not how the Bible talks about God. God is very much tied up in his own story, and his story is unfolding, and he manifests himself in history, and he makes promises and commitments, and he presents himself in a certain way. And so there's God. And then the second character is us. And we know ourselves by virtue of what is revealed about us in Scripture, and pretty much in the same way that we know who God is. We know what we are like, and we know what we are capable of, and we know what kind of world we live in because we both love it and enjoy it, and there are times which we absolutely hate it because of the kind of suffering we do in this kind of world. See, so we have a certain kind of God who has a certain kind of character, and we have a certain kind of world in which we live, and that's revealed to us, and we can experience that as well. And then there's that which exists between this certain kind of God and this certain kind of person in a situation, and that's relationship, the relationship between God and human beings. Or God and believers especially, and in particular. Now see, what Lewis is saying there is that right there is enough to make the problem of pain a problem, because there's something out of kilter between who we understand God to be on the one hand and our experience sometime in this world, that there's something out of sync here, because he's like this, and this is what I'm feeling and experiencing and have been for a long time. And then there's also this relationship that's full of all kinds of promises and assurances and agreements. And then there's a fourth character, and that character is suffering itself. It's interesting how we think of suffering and how we think of this world. I have to admit, when I think about this coronavirus, I often say I feel like a ghost is following me. They say it's a character. It's a virus. It's just a dumb virus doing what the only thing it knows what to do. But it almost feels like something is out to get me, and I think that in particular because I'm immunosuppressed from heart transplant. And so I'm just so careful, and I'm looking over my shoulder at that which I know is there, but I can't see. And so there's this sense in which suffering itself, or the possibility of suffering, is always kind of looming in the background. Now, see, I don't think that we have the possibility of what we think of as lament from a Jewish Christian perspective if we don't have those four elements. And tomorrow I'm going to unpack that a little more. But one thing this will help you with, this way of thinking, it will help you when people say, well, you shouldn't be bringing your complaints to God because, God has done this and God has done that. And it just shows that you're ungrateful. What I would say with that, to that is two things, actually. In some ways, God, given his nature, creates the problem. He creates not the problem, the possibility. And the second thing is that prayer, we never initiate prayer. I don't know if you've ever thought of that, but that God initiates prayer. God by his very being, God by virtue of being creator, God by virtue of acting, God by virtue of loving. We don't know what love is apart from the love of God, that God himself has done things that set us back on our heels. And we say, well, that's the way God is. And I'm experiencing this horrific struggle that I have just been feel like I'm talking to the walls when I'm trying to talk to God. And see, if he was a God who was indifferent to us, then we wouldn't have the problem of suffering. We would just have suffering. We'll talk about it some more. Thanks. Have a great day.